Hi guys, Bex here. I've just gone through and come up with a very rough outline of what I'm going to do. I've just written it down here so you can pause it and have a look. Of about 5 sort of tutorials I'm going to go through with markers only for my first lot of tutorials on my YouTube, and then we're going to do a colour along in real time with probably a Joanna Basford picture, something like flowers and so on. So part 1 I'm going to talk about, which I'm doing today, just the different markers that you can get and have a little look at them all. Part 2 I'm going to look at blending with markers, layering and colour choice and so on. Part 3 looking at doing backgrounds and larger areas with markers. Part 4 looking at colour combinations and some of my favourite ones, which is part of the key to blending with markers. And part 5 looking at embellishments using gel pens and adding things on and so on. So that's roughly what we're going to do. So this is part 1. And I'm just going to look and go through a little bit closer all the different markers that you can get in case you have markers and you're just not sure what to do with them, or you don't have any and you're wondering about them. The first 3 I'm going to go through are alcohol markers, because a lot of people end up buying these kind of markers not really knowing what to do with them. One of the more expensive ends is the Copic marker. Now these alcohol based markers, if you can see the nib there, the Copics and the Spectrum Noir, which is this one, come with a thinner nib and then what's called the chisel nib. And there you go. Now the problem with alcohol markers, as you can see, I'm just making lines on here with the Copic, Spectrum Noir, which again is the smaller nib. See, the one thing with alcohol markers is, if you hold it, do you see that bleed? Very, very, they're beautiful, beautiful markers for the right project. So you hold at the end. So if you hold at the start, pull across and hold at the end, you will get that cluster of additional ink. That's the Spectrum Noir, that's the Copic. And now the Sharpie, which is the same thing. It's a smaller nib. But again, if you hold it, you will get that spread. The problem with all these ones is that I will turn the paper over now. This is just normal copy of paper. And you see how it bleeds. It's actually gone through to, I bet you that's gone through to, yeah, three pieces of paper later. 4 pieces, and it's still there. So alcohol markers are great for projects. I use them for certain individual projects that I'm doing on very thick card-like paper, or I also use my alcohol markers with acrylic paint on canvases. So they're great for things like that, but they are not very good for colouring books, because they will have this bleed through, and so you basically, unless you put a lot of paper underneath, you'll potentially have a bleed through to the page under, and you'll definitely ruin the picture on the back. So for colouring, they are not the greatest markers to use, but I just wanted to show you them because it might be that you have them or you've heard of them. For colouring, the best ones are water-based markers. And what we're talking about there with water-based markers, the main go-to ones will be fine liners. So I'm just going to put a couple of fine liners here. I want to go through each one of my favourite fine liners. My all-time favourites are these ones here, which are Staedtler Tri-Plus fine liners. That's this one here. They're a 0.3 nib. I'm just going to show you quickly the range of Staedtler. So this is my little fold out carry case. So that's a range of some of the Staedtlers. Oh, and here's the Stabilo as well, 0.88. While I'm here and I've got this open. So that's just to show you. But the Tri-Plus are 0.3 nib. So if we actually open one of these, hopefully you can see against the white paper, it's a very, very fine nib. So if you just draw a line, you can see it's a very fine line. So when you're colouring with it, you're going backwards and forwards to get the colour, or small circles. I will go through in part 2 blending, but I just wanted to show you the colour build up. So it's a very smooth pen and very, very fine nib, and really quite a good colour range. The other one I really like is the Stabilo 0.88. This is a 0.4. If you can see there we go, Stabilo 0.88. This is a 0.4 nib, so it's very slightly bigger. You can't really tell the difference. Again, very fine line, circular, and it's got a good ink spread. It's the same smoothness as Triplus. So that's another favourite of mine, and they all go together. The one fine liner that you can't really go past, to be honest, for value for money, is Shuttle Art. So I'm just going to put, so Shuttle Art do a really good pack. That's one tray there I'm showing you of 100 colours of fine liners, which Triplus do a 50 pack and Stabilo do a 50 pack as well. So they've only got 50. But Shuttle Art, this is the third and final tray. I'm just showing you here. Shuttle Art do 100, and they're actually quite reasonably priced. So here's a Shuttle Art one, a Shuttle Art fine liner. The one thing I would say about them, they are a 0.4 nib, so the same as the Stabilo, but when you use it, some of them, this one's actually quite a good one. It gives a good straight line and a good amount of colour there. Some of them can be slightly scratchy, so you just have to bear that in mind when you're using it, but it's still not too bad. The other one that you can get, well, you can get lots of fine liners, to be honest, and they're all about just purchasing some and just having a go, really. Tombow, which is quite a well-known one for brush markers, have just brought out one called Twin Tone, and one end is a 1mm nib, which we'll talk about in a minute, but then this end, I would say that's probably a 0.2. It's extremely fine. Finer than, see how that's even finer than the Shuttle Art 0.4, but you have to do a lot more lines to get that continuity of colour, so a little harder to use in that perspective. It is, though, that'd be really good for detailing and embellishing, which I will do a tutorial on that. So that's another one that's just come out, the Twin Tones. There's a limited colour range on that one. So I think they do, it's about 2024, that's all. So for value for money, you can't go past Shuttle Art. My favourite to use in the sort of Joanna Basford books and Kirby's and so on would be the Triplus fine liners, followed very closely with the Stabilo 0.68. Sorry, 0.88, which is the 0.4 nibs. So they're fine liners. They're an absolute must for adult colouring books because of the detail. Because they're such small nibs, you can really get into the smaller areas. So definitely get some fine liners. The next ones, as well as the fine liners, are the normal pens. Now, the normal pens, so we're moving up to, this is Stabilo 0.88. So, sorry, 0.68. So I'm getting them the wrong way around, I do apologise. So 0.88 is the smaller nib. 0.68, which is this one here, Stabilo 68, is the 1mm nib. So what you'd, I suppose, term more as a normal marker. So if you just got a Faber-Castell connector pens, or you know, it's kind of the pens that your kids would use in their colouring books. It's very smooth. These are very smooth. They're a good range of colour. So I just showed you one tray there. They come in 50, and that's the second tray. So there's a good range of colour for those ones. If you want, and you can get them in all of the fine liners. You can buy smaller packs of sort of 10 or 15 or 20 and so on. You don't have to go for the really big range of colours. So yeah, they're very nice to use, the 1mm nib. The other ones, as I mentioned before, the Twin Tone. So we looked at the fine liner end, and then the other end is the 1mm end. So it's the same kind of coverage and area in that. These are really good to use in the adult colouring books as well. They will cover a slightly larger area quicker. Yeah, and they're combined with, I mean, the Twin Tones, that's quite good because combined with the fine liner pens as well for some more of your detail and your outlining and so on. Yeah, it's a good combination. But you can do, if all you have are these pens, you can work your way around that. You just have to be a little bit more careful when actually using them. So that's your 1mm nibs. So the other ones that we have, so you go from your 0.4 fine liners to your 1mm normals, and then we have what's called brush pens. Now brush pens, there's a couple of different ones. You've got Tombow brush pens, which are very, very common, give good coverage, and then you've also got Faber-Castell brush Pitt artist pens, brush pens. Now these ones, the Faber-Castell Pitt artist pens are much more expensive. I buy them, I can't afford to buy, you can get them in lots of 60 or 30, but they're quite expensive, so I just buy them on their own, and then just certain colours. But just to show you what the brush pens are like, so they've got a wider nib, more shaped like a brush, hence brush pen. So when you're using them, I would use brush markers in books and stuff for backgrounds, because they apply a lot of colour very quickly. What you've got to be careful of, or use to your advantage, is the way that you use it. So you can use it like a brush, but you will actually potentially get lines the way I put it on, or you use it like you would another one and do circular movements for solid colour. I'll go through this when we do a tutorial on using brush pens and that for backgrounds. So that the Faber-Castell Pitt pens are probably the nicest to use for coverage, but a very close second, and one that I can't do without, is my Tombows. Now the Tombow brush pen, one end you've got the brush, and you can see that's very large. Well, what's this really good is for backgrounds, it's a beautiful orange, backgrounds on around the outside. So with Joanna Basford, say you have a garland of flowers or a picture, and then some of my pictures you might have seen I then do an outline of black around. My Tombow black brush pen is my go-to. What Tombow's good at is the second layering. So as you can see there, hopefully you can see, when you do the first layer you might get some lines, some show through, but you do a second layer with Tombow and you will get solid colour. Now with the black Tombow pen, that is the best one I've found, and I've tried many pens to get black. Some people use what's called a Posca pen for black background, and some people might even use acrylic paint if they're doing a black background, but I've found that the Tombow brush pen is the best for all of them and the easiest to use. The other thing with the Tombow is it does on the other end have a 1mm nib part, so that's quite good for outlining. So you can kind of go round in black and then fill it in. So the Tombows for black is a must-have. I buy them, you know, 3 or 4 at a time on their own. I don't have that many Tombows because I really only use the brush pens for backgrounds. And when we cover that, I will talk about that. But so what the colours I tend to buy, I'll just change this paper. The colours I tend to buy for the brush pens are things like, this is a gorgeous one, Faber-Castell Ivory, which is beautiful for a background because it's very light, and you can't often get that kind of colour in many pens. And the same, if I pull out, I've got all my Tombows here, if I just pull out my Tombow range, as well as my go-to black and that orange that I really like. You see I've got a very sort of stone colour there, a couple of pale blues which I would use for the sky, and again an ivory type one. So it's all background kind of colours. And in Pitt pens I have a lot of greens and blues and the ivory. So yeah, it's brush pens are definitely best for backgrounds in colouring books. The Faber-Castell Pitt pen, I will just mention, if you end up buying some, you can get a brush pen. You can also get one that has S on, which is small. Now the S one is just a fine liner, so a smaller nib. So it's probably, I'd say, about a 0.4, 0.3, 0.4. They're quite good, but they're very expensive, and to be honest, the Tri-Plus ones are a little bit smoother, I think, for use. So if you're going to invest in some Pick pens, yeah, definitely use the brush, get the brush ones, the ones with the B, not the ones with the S. If you're in Australia, Officeworks sell them on their own, so you can literally just go and buy 1 or 2 at a time, which is what I did and how I built up my collection. So I think that's on the brush pens. The last thing I do want to mention is, in fact, what I will do from the last one I mentioned is what I would use for embellishment on pictures. So let me just do, here's my black Tombow. I'm just going to put a bit of black down here. I will do a whole tutorial on embellishment as well, because I've found, especially with markers, one of the biggest advantages over pencils is how you can make different effects and embellish. Yeah, we will definitely do a big section on that. So I've just used my Tombow to make the black. So gel pens. Now gel pens, I have probably 3 that I use all the time. I don't actually have many gel pens. So apologies out there for people who are big gel pen users. I do like them, the couple I've used, but I tend to, these are the ones I tend to use all the time. So this is a Signo Uniball Silver, a Signo Uniball Gold, a white, and then this is, I'm not even sure the make, hybrid that says, I think I just found it in a stationery shop, and it's clear glitter. So these are the ones I use. This one being clear glitter, whatever colour you go over, so if I did, let me do, say, some of that orange Tombow as well, just put a bit there. Whatever colour you go over, because it's clear, it just adds glitter, which is really good. So if I, it's making me look slightly grey there. So if I go over like that, you get glitter on there. If I do a bit on the, over on the black there, you can get glitter on there. So when you move it in the lights, yeah, the colour still shows through. Hope this is coming through on here, I'm not sure. By the way, with all of this, I am just sharing what I've learned from trial and error over the years. I've never really watched many tutorials myself, and I've never had any training or anything. I'm just sharing what I like and what I don't like. Yeah, so hopefully you'll get something out of it. And if not, you wouldn't be here by now. You would have swiped left, right, stop, whatever. Anyway, I will carry on. So one of my favourites are the silver and gold one. So when you do a black background, and you'll notice this in a lot of my pictures, if you use a silver pen and put dots on there, and you can outline stuff, you can do stripes, you could do a little star, whatever you want to. Yeah, really good. People will often try and want kind of a highlight effect and go for a white. You can use like white Posca pens, or even white gel pen like this. However, if you use a white gel pen over a marker as opposed to a pencil, it actually soaks up the pigment. So if I had this white pen and I do a little circle here, it will show as grey almost. And if it's probably better if I illustrate with a different colour to black. So if I just colour a patch here, it's just a shuttle eyeliner, sorry. And then get the white pen and do a circle. What you will find is, especially give it another, 30 seconds or so, rather than showing totally as white, that will pull some of the pigment from the pen, so it will get a little bit of that turquoise colour. Now you can actually use that to your advantage in some, and we will talk about that when we're looking at some of the effects. But for actual, if you want it to catch the light, or say you have an eye and you wanted to do a splash of colour, let me just do some gold as well as the silver here. Little star there. The metallic will not pick up the pigment, and then will also capture the light, so you can see how it maintains. So here is where I did the white. sorry. Here's where I did the white gel pen, compared to, say, this one, which was the silver. So you can see how the white gel pen looks like just a pale grey almost now, because it's pulled through some of that black pigment. Hope this is coming through okay. And then but the silver and the gold has maintained that light fast. Because it's metallic, it won't pull any pigment through. So if you're using markers, definitely go and invest in a silver and gold metallic pen. So this is Signo, my favourites, and I've used quite a few. It's Signo Uniball. Signo Uniball. I think they're about $4 in Australia. Most of them will use though, but yeah, you might have to try a couple of different ones. Some are better than others. So those are the pens that I use to embellish. So to do little dots and do little strokes and so on. I hope you found a few things useful there. I just wanted to quickly roughly run through some of the markers I have and what I use, so that when we're looking at doing a tutorial, Joanna Basford, we can, you know, and I refer to a marker that I'm using, yeah, you know a little bit more about them, that's all. Whatever you have though, we can do something with. Whatever size they are, we can do something with, and blending and so on. You don't need the really expensive stuff. Yeah, you can blend, and you can make lots of different effects just by how you combine the colours and so on. Blending will be the next tutorial, part 2, so I hope you'll join me there. Thanks for watching. Bye.